Hi, welcome to 2020 Tasty Treats and with the GourmetQuilter and the Leftovers Pantry. So we're doing a series of 20 different days of things that we might do with a leftovers fabric pantry, and there's a pattern on GourmetQuilter.com if you're interested. There's downloadable information that comes out each day as well as the videos each day. This is part 2 of our 20. So last time we set up our pantry, we worked out what we were going to do. It might have been bags, it might have been drawers, it might have been boxes. We've labelled everything. We are ready to fill our pantry. It's pretty impressive. So I think what we'll do this time is we'll start looking. We just briefly looked at some of the leftovers that we might have from projects and things. We've got some unusual shapes at times. Now I will make some sort of a suggestion. If you're an applique person, you may want to keep some of the odd shaped pieces in a separate bin just for applique. Applique people quite like to rummage through and find shapes that'll fit a shape, something that they're going to applique, and I do a lot of that. So you might want to trim off anything like that and put it in a separate bin ready for applique. If they're too small for anything that you think you would ever use, then guess what? We have a thing called a rubbish bin. So if you don't think you'd ever use anything like that, toss that one out, but you can trim up the other pieces and things so that you can use them. And so what I'm going to suggest is that initially, if you haven't got your leftovers tamed, they do need taming, and they're such a pleasure to use when you know that you can just go to a drawer and find a strip or squares or something of the size that you're looking for to make something. Or you might be trying to make whole quilts out of your leftovers, and all of that works fine. So as we go through the different days, we'll be making some different blocks and units and things so that we can end up making really good use of our fabrics. But initially today I was going to go through. So this is a strip that's a full width fabric strip. It's not even because it's an end. It was left over from a project. So what I would do with something like this is I like to fold everything over in 4, so I'm folding in half with the selvages together, and then I fold again, and I find that works, generally speaking, really well for cutting and things like that. So I've got my narrowest piece on top so I can see how that's going to fit, and I use the lines on my board a lot, particularly for this, but anyway, and it looks to me like I can get a 1.5 inch strip out of that piece there. So I would need to line that up so that it only is just about 1.5 at this end, so that I can get that out of it. So I've got some little edges sitting out here, and I'm going to line this up on a straight line on the board with the ruler, and I'm just going to cut through that. So you can cut a strip to your narrowest size of that actual strip. And so I'm going to come across now 1.5 inches and just see if I can actually get a 1.5, and it looks like I can just make it at 1.5. So I've lined this up so that 1/2 inch is sticking past a line, and I can just make the 1.5 there. And I don't need these little trimmings, so they can be tossed. So now I've got a 1.5 inch strip ready to use. So I suggest that you go through any piles of leftovers that you have, find fabrics that are full width strips first, and then trim them to sizes like this. And then once they're like this, you can put them straight into the pantry. So this one can go in here with my 1.5 inch pieces. So, and the other thing about drawers and things, quite often if you're working on a project and you need several of a size, you can bring the whole drawer out at a time if you need to as well. The same works with bags and boxes, of course. They can all be pulled out individually. So then you might have a piece like this. This again is a full width piece, and it's looking pretty nice the way it is, but it's going to just need a little bit of trimming up. And so I would suggest out of this that I'm going to get a 4.5 inch strip out of that. So I would again trim off one side, and then I would come along until I can comfortably fit that into one of the cuts that I've got drawers for. Now you may find you have a whole lot of something that you do a lot with that are left over. So you might, bindings for example, I tend to use 2.5 inch wide strips for bindings. We use a lot of 2.5 inch wide strips these days for all sorts of projects. So I would find that would work really well. My 2.5 inch drawer will get full very quickly. You might prefer to use, say, a 2 1/4 inch size for bindings. I know that a lot of people do. So you may want to make yourself a container for 2 1/4 inch, because you might find you can get 2 1/4 inch out of some of your leftovers. Plus, if you've got leftover parts of binding, they can all go into that drawer. You can make a scrappy binding with them. There's lots of things you can do. If they're all in one place, you know that you can work with those. So this one was 4 1/2 inches. So I would now go and put that one into my drawer with 4 1/2 inch strips. So it's really that simple. Sometimes pieces are a little bit larger. Now I have only suggested going up to something like, my labels go up to 6 1/2 inches wide, and that's because in general I don't expect many leftovers to be much larger than that. You could of course have larger ones. This is an example of a piece of fabric that's not level all the way along, so you've always got to measure from your narrowest part as to what you can get out of it, and then you just want to trim up that edge there. Now if it's way more, and it looks to me like I could just about get 2 cuts, but probably not quite. This one fabric is a little bit short here, but so I can get my 6 1/2 out of that. I might have been able to get, oh maybe I can, we'll have a look, an extra 1 1/2 as well. Or I could have chosen, perhaps I could do a 5 1/2 and a 1 1/2, or things like that. So you can get more than one cut out of something. I would suggest going for the largest cut that you think you might use first on a particularly larger pieces like this, so that you get that out first, and then what's left you can cut into smaller amounts. But it is a good idea to divide it up and rather than waste it, and I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to trim off my edge to start with, and I'm going to come along to 6 inches, cut myself a 6 inch strip, and then I'm going to come along another 1 1/2 inches here to make sure that I'm well within this edge that's not straight here. So out of that leftover, I've now got some very usable 1 1/2 inch fabric and 6 inch fabric, and again they'll go into the drawer. So you might have shorter lengths, you might have narrower pieces. Again, shorter lengths, cut everything to the width. So the size that's going into your containers will be your minimum size. So it might be longer than this piece here will cut down to a 3 1/2 inch wide. It could be longer. I would leave the length at this stage, but you know that it's that wide that's in that drawer. So I think you've probably got the hang of that now. There's lots of sizes. You've got the labels and suggested sizes in the pattern to go ahead and set your pantry up. Just work your way through. So I do suggest that you iron everything as you pull it out of your leftovers bin, like this piece here. It will just cut much better if it's ironed before we cut it to size. And they will sit much nicer, of course, in your containers as well. So setting up, just working on strips at the moment. We will be cutting down into some squares and rectangles and things later, but this time I would suggest just cutting what you've got into strips and filling that pantry ready to start doing something with what's in there. And so that was it for this session. I will see you again with the Leftovers Pantry number 3.